Still a few days left this year, but the Pacers play games. So today's the day we're reviewing the best of 2022 for the Indiana Pacers. Some crazy games, some crazy performances, some stunning moments from this franchise. We'll get to it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today it is Thursday the 29th. It's the final weekday without final weekday without recapping a Pacers game of the year. So it is time for the best of, baby, best of 2022. For the Indiana Pacers. Look, last season didn't end well, but lots of highs, lots of fun stuff this year. We're getting to it all today. I suppose this could be top 3 for each of us, but I came up with 7 things because I am terrible at assignments. But hey, it's all going to be fun. And joining me to do this, he publishes Pacers Press on Substack, covering the Pacers and Mad Ants. It's Zach Pearson. He's back. Zach, what's up, man? How's your holidays going?
It's awesome, man. Going good.
Have you had a better or worse 2022 than the Indiana Pacers?
Slightly better, but just slightly.
I will let you go first because I have several options as backup plans. So, number 3, number 1, I don't care what order you're going. Give me a best of 2022 for the Indiana Pacers.
Okay, so I'll start with my third. A little recency bias for this one, but I'm going to go with Andrew Nembhard's game winner over LeBron. A pretty solid pick, I think. It was just a joy to see, the rookie come in and hit a big-time shot off the brilliant pass there from Halliburton, so you can't really beat that, I think.
Banger. My number 1. That's my number 1. So,
okay.
Yes, we are starting off. I mean, that game was from a perspective of like stories and rookies and humans and basketball, like perfect for a team like the Pacers, who are up to that point this season. I think they were like 3 games over 500 at that point. We're this new scrappy team. No one knows much about them, but they keep winning. And this Nembhard kid starting, who is this guy? Hasn't had his moment yet, like just in there for defense to that point. And they go to LA and they're playing the Lakers. They just got their butts kicked the night before by Ivica Zubac looking like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like the wheels could be falling off. They got 6 road games in a row coming up. They're down 17 points with, what was it, like 8.5 minutes to go in that game. Like they looked dead. Like that could have been a turning point of your season. You just get your butt kicked in LA 2 nights in a row. And then they play perfect basketball for the rest of the game and find a way to get a shot at the buzzer from a rookie that no one's ever heard of, who just over LeBron, perfect fade, perfect pass, perfect moment. That, to me, for this team, the way the season had built up to that point, the way they've played since, like that's a big confidence game. That's over one of the best to ever do it. Like that was perfect to me. Like from so many perspectives, that game was awesome. And I could tell by a lot of, the reaction to it that fans agreed. I think that was the moment of this year for the Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, and plus you have Kevin Pritchard running onto the court and jumping in that pile. I mean, that makes it so much better. Just like hugging TJ McConnell, it's like just perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a moment and a half, and it's hard to like put into context how big those games are for teams like this. Like they have been so bad in the clutch so many times this season. And like, I don't know if it's on your list. We might end up, it's pretty far down my list. Like Halliburton just hit another game winner last week. Like, they need more of those moments because they have trouble holding on to games. They almost blew that one, but Andrew Nembhard saved the day. That one was very high on my list. I'm just going to do a random one because we're going to end up doing more than 3 each year. I doubt anyone remembers this game. It was the Pacers' first win of the calendar year. Do you remember it at all? Do you know who they played?
Nah, I couldn't tell you.
In Utah, at home, against the Utah Jazz. The Pacers have lost a bajillion in a row. They're 14-25. The wheels are coming off. They're a month removed from their whole team having a meeting with the front office and the coach, not the whole team, but their best players, saying, hey, we might change directions. They're playing Utah. Miles is out, right? They're going to be without him for a while. Kiefer Sykes is starting. Dwayne Washington starting. Domantas Sabonis, 42 points. All over the Jazz in this game. plus 13, 18 for 22 from the field. Dominates on the inside. Nothing good from basically any other Pacer that night. Sabonis kicked the Jazz butts. It was one of his, if not maybe his best performance as a Pacer. It's still his only 40-point game of his career. Pacers, and Lance was also fantastic in that game. If you'll recall, that was the night all the stories were about, their chemistry, his passing. His exact assist total in that game was 14, right? That game was a joy to see and be a part of and watch their chemistry develop, and Sabonis just kick butt for the Pacers to finally get a win.
Yeah, the Lance Sabonis duo was fun for that stint when he was back in. It was just fun to hear them talk also like post game about their chemistry and everything, and then Sabonis just wasn't there anymore.
Like that game, just like I remember big games from a lot of Pacers. That one just, I don't know how or why, but it is not in my memory at all. Going through the games last year, did you remember that at all? Like before I described it?
I mean, when you think back at like the Lance Stevenson games, I'm thinking that's 2 seasons ago. It's like it's crazy to me that was this year.
Amazingly, the Lance quarter didn't even make my list. Like that could, I don't know if it made yours or not. When he had 20 and a quarter against Brooklyn, like that whole first 10 that he had when this team was desperate for fun to start the year. They had lost a bajillion in a row and were getting smoked by COVID. That was a fun time contextually. I think looking back on the year, he provided quite a few of the moments. I'm doing 2 in a row because my second one is very much similar to my first one. Another game I highly doubt you or anyone remembers vividly or specifically. Do you remember who the Pacers played in their final game before they traded Caris LeVert?
Wasn't it the Cavs?
No. They traded him that day to the Cavs.
Right.
The final game Caris LeVert played for the Pacers, they host the Bulls. They lose, right? The result was not good. Vucevic was amazing. Caris LeVert in his final home game as a Pacer, 41 minutes of play, 19 for 26, 42 points, 8 assists. Dominant game from Caris LeVert on his way out, which so fitting in retrospect. I remember that game really well because all the chatter was about where he's going to go, all these teams that are interested in him and the bigs, and Brogdon couldn't be traded, but all sorts of Pacers deals. How are they going to duck the tax or stay far below it? Caris LeVert said, F all that trade stuff. I'm really good. And that might have helped the Pacers get quite the haul for him. So I'm sure they will be happy in retrospect, even if they just get Andrew Nembhard, that he played well enough to get them quite a haul. But fun moment for a team that needed a distraction on the court to have Caris LeVert show why he was valuable and ball out against the Bulls. I do remember that game a little bit better than the game against Utah, but that one, another one that like because so much has changed in the 10 months since the trade deadline, just kind of like flies past people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really tough too for me, like just to bank games like that and think back. It's like we play so much, and then the off season's so hectic, especially with the draft stuff, that I'm just like, I have to like clean the slate completely. And then I'm like, how is that still this year? It's wild.
Yeah, there's this game, they started LeVert, Torrey Craig, and Justin Holiday, right? All of them were gone days later. Reggie Perry played 10 minutes that game. Does anyone remember the one game of Reggie Perry that the Pacers needed last season? Like, it's like a Twilight Zone era where it's like, oh yeah, that I can't even believe that happened. That was the last game of the pre-Ricky Rubio Pacers era, and Caris LeVert absolutely balled out.
Yeah, you got an interview with him, didn't you?
I did. I talked to a lot of those guys right on then. Reggie Perry was cool. Like, I always feel good for those guys who, regardless of opportunity, just like get a chance to get back in. Him and Ahmad Kaver, right? Like those are two names that I will remember and no one else will after the season. Hey guys, let's take one short little break here so I can talk to you about Rocket Money. Say goodbye to last year's outdated, disorganized methods of managing your money and say hello to Rocket Money, the better way to hack your finances in 2023. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of the people who have subscriptions they've forgotten about, like a streaming service you bought just to watch one show or a free trial that you never even used. And Rocket Money will quickly and easily identify those subscriptions for you so you can stop paying for the ones you don't want. They make it very easy to cancel those subscriptions. Just a click of a button, find the subscription, click cancel. They'll take care of it for you, whether that's that streaming service. It's so hard to cancel Amazon Prime, for example, a million things. It's so easy. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. That's rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. I would like to thank everybody for making Locked On Pacers their first listen today and every single day. Pacers Cavs tonight. Go check out Locked On Cavs for your second listen. Chris Manning, Evan Damrell, kill it covering that Cleveland team. Zach, number 2 for you. Best moment 2022 for the Indiana Pacers.
You glazed over it slightly, but it's the Lance Stevenson 20-point first quarter. To me, it was pretty cool because I was there. So
there you go.
It's tough to not keep that one in the bank. But Lance being back in Indiana was pretty awesome, and seeing it in person was just made it that much cooler. I don't think we'll see Lance back in Indiana again. I guess you can't ever rule it out just because he's been here like 20 times. But it's the way this team's currently constructed. I don't see that being happening again. So it's definitely a little extra special.
If I had an 8th on my list, it would be this. Like I was thinking of that Lance time when he was really, really good, showing off the pass. What did he finish with that game? Like, he had over 30 points, didn't he?
I think it was 30.
He went crazy in that Nets game, and I don't remember like anything else about that game because the Pacers back then were just flailing around. That was right before that Jazz game too, but they were just flailing around trying to, field a team at this stage of the season. Like that was the Nets game that Caver played, I remember, because he scored at the end and like messed up the like made the Pacers cover the spread or something like that. Everybody was really mad at him for that, and that was his only ever to this day NBA points. Justin Anderson was on their team at that time. Like they were barely fielding a team, and so to have Lance at 20 points in the first quarter, I could just pull up the box score instead of just guessing the whole time. I mean, that was special. I don't think he missed a shot. He was playing the guitar. Sabonis was going crazy. I mean, that was for a team that needed some fun and for a fan base that needed some fun. I mean, that was just huge.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see, and it's like when you're sitting there watching it from the fan perspective, it's just like that energy that Lance brings. You just remember how it's just like nobody replicates that in Indiana, it seems. And it was pretty cool for sure.
I don't like that was like surreal to me. Like a lot of moments you can describe or remember lots of little details. Like I just kind of sat there. I just kept tweeting Lance's name like in disbelief because it's kind of hard to soak up that moment where the crowd is going nuts for a 14-24 team that's losing because one player cannot miss, is doing the craziest silly things. Kevin Durant's about to kick his butt. The team is not any good. This guy has been on the team for all of 6 days or something. I forget what it was at that stage, and just had the crowd in the absolute palm of his hand. Loudest the arena has been that whole season, basically up to that point. Yeah, that I should have probably included that for sure. That was such a fun moment to be in the arena for, just to see how everybody was reacting.
Yeah, right at the beginning of the year too. So it was like January 5th or something. And so it's like crazy that it's in 2022. But that's one where I wish I would have heard the Denary Quinn broadcast just to kind of hear the reaction side of it. That probably would have been cool live too. But I guess I'll take watching it.
Yeah, I would like to go back and listen to that one as well. I mean, 20 points in one quarter is crazy for anybody. He came off the bench. He couldn't be stopped. Trotting to the rim like every possession. It was nuts. This one is another. This one I think more people will remember than my first two for sure. And this is one quarter. This is not a game. This is not a moment. This is not a shot. This is one quarter. The very first game the Pacers played when they had all their new guys, right? They played the Cavs in Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and Halliburton started for them for the first time. Buddy Hield started for them for the first time. Jalen Smith came off the bench. Tristan Thompson was in their rotation. I almost, by the way, jokingly included the Tristan Thompson Pacers tribute in my best of.
Should have.
What a funny thing that he played 4 games and then dropped the thank you Pacers on Instagram. They played the Cavs in that first game. They actually lost. Karis LeVert had a ball in fourth quarter to put the game away, but the Pacers scored 47 in the first quarter that night. They could not be stopped, and all their new guys looked awesome. Halliburton had 12 points and 1 assist in that quarter. Jalen Smith had 6 points and hit 2 threes. Buddy Hield had 6 points and hit 2 threes. Like everybody on that team was rolling and clicking. They could not miss. They made 10 threes in one quarter of basketball in that game. They had 11 assists. They had 17 shots. They were up 19, or excuse me, 19 over the Cavs after one quarter. They lost the game. But for a moment in time, everybody thought, wow, look at what the Pacers just did at the deadline to get all these dudes who cannot be stopped, who are scoring like crazy, who are running Karis LeVert's new team out of the gym. Like, in retrospect, too, given how the Pacers are playing this year, like over 500, good offensive team in transition, that should have been an omen that some of these pieces can click offensively. And I remember thinking in that moment, like, what a special night that this team of, like Zach Lowe described the Jazz this season this way, right? He said there was no plan for the Jazz to have this collection of players. They just traded away Mitchell and Gobert and ended up with this collection of players. Like, yes, there was some plan from the Pacers, but I feel like they got the best value they could for LeVert and Sabonis, and then they made the Jalen Smith trade. It's like, this wasn't the roster they thought they would have in this game or this season at any point. But it looks awesome for this one quarter. They lost, but that quarter still is so vivid in my memory, how well they played, how into it everybody was, and how much it felt like the tide had turned so fast from one era to the next.
Yeah, I think Pacers won the trade was like trending on Twitter probably that night.
Sabonis hadn't even played yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was truly ridiculous. And then LeVert was like locking up Chris Duarte in the fourth quarter and scored all the points, and the Cavs won, so it didn't matter at all. But that one stood out to me in my head. Give me another one, Zach. I got a ton. I could go all day.
Yeah, so actually mine's more off the court for the last one, or my favorite one, and I think trading for Halliburton and Hield is my favorite moment of the year. The beginning of a new era for Indiana basketball, and Tyrese is such a easy player to root for, and whatever that Wally dude has to say about it, it doesn't matter. Halliburton, in my opinion, is an all-star, and making that trade look very nice for both sides, especially like Buddy Hield being a part of it too. I think he's been really good and can be excellent when the threes fall. So Halliburton and Hield, that chemistry I think fits perfectly into like the changing culture and young players this team has, and it's been a blast to watch through the ups and downs. I
loved that. I asked Halliburton about the Wally comments after the game yesterday, and he said, I get motivation from tweets from people with 2 followers. Like, I don't think he is using it as like this everyday fuel kind of thing, but he's taking it very well and in stride and playing great basketball. And yes, that is certainly, like, I remember all the chatter coming up to, that time of the season for the Pacers was about De'Aaron Fox or, who they could get for Turner or what other Sabonis landing spots. So I can't even remember a lot of the spots that were being really heavily discussed. Like, Halliburton was not a name that was like frequently discussed at all. Like, it was stunning that he was in that. And then to also get Hield as in that as well, which at the time I kind of viewed as just like salary ballast. Like, he's been good for the Pacers beyond his relationship with Halliburton. And Halliburton, could be an all-star in the first year. Probably should be after that trade. And that's a home run. And even at the time, Halliburton was considered so talented, that was a home run. I mean, the way they danced around that deadline, like getting in theory Nembhard and a first plus Jalen Smith plus Tyrese Halliburton for vets on a whatever it was 13 and 26 team. I mean, that is all probably a moment of the year, but that trade specifically, obviously the one that gets you a franchise guy for several seasons. I mean, that is just unbelievable work by Kevin Pritchard. Yeah, and now you get to pair it with Benedict Mathurin and Chris Duarte and a couple other shooters. Buddy Hield, he can shoot. I mean, obviously, but it's just a really quick turnaround to what we thought would be a slow turning of the ship. It's still got a long way to go, obviously, but it's just so fun to see all these athletic young dudes just ball every night, win or lose. That's super, super fun. A slow turning of the ship. You sound like KP there. He always talked about the turning ship last year. I thought that was a pretty good analogy, though, to consider it like a ship on open water. The Pacers transitioning from one team to the next. I think if you're going to include that, drafting Mathurin should also be there, but that's kind of retrospective, just given now that we know he's like really good for his age. But because you brought him up, I will say I do have a Mathurin game on here, and that was his 32 in Brooklyn. The Pacers set their franchise record for made threes in that game. Obviously, it's going to look, like a fantastic night, but that didn't even stand out. It's that they won. That was their first 2-game winning streak of the season. They beat the Wizards a couple days before. And Mathurin, still to this day, this is his highest scoring game of his career. 32 points, 10 free throws. He makes 8 shots. He hits 6 threes. Like, that was the moment where I was like, okay, this dude's had some good games already, 26, 27 early in the season, but it's like, this dude just went toe to toe with KD in the Pacers win after being on ESPN last night. He had 30 like a week later as well. But that was the moment for me where I already thought he was good, from preseason and in the first couple of games where he was scoring well. But it was like, oh, wow, this guy could be really, really special to see him do that on that stage against that team. The way he did it, right? Rookies don't get to the foul line. He did it a bunch. That was so special. That one has to be out there to me.
Yeah, I mean, the way he was able to get to the rim, it's just like way too easy, and it's just like seeing him be able to do that, and was it like the 15th game or not even, it's super cool to see your 6th overall pick do that to, Nets and company. So that was cool. I know the one was that the Nets game Simmons didn't play, or was he there?
Correct. I'd have to check actually.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was like I think Ben Simmons played. I can't remember, but yeah, I mean, it's still just the way he was able to get to the rim and then also draw fouls against all those premier players. It was just like, well, what do we draft?
Yeah, 12 days later is, the 20-point half, whatever. I think it was higher than that against Denver. He finishes with 30 that night. Like they lose that game, but they aren't even close without what he did. I think it was a 20-point half night, 23 in the first half that night. Like those are the moments where it's just like, oh wow, this kid can absolutely play. And I didn't, you knew he was good, but to see it against contenders, to see him do it twice, like he hasn't even had a game of that level since. Not that he's been bad or worse. I just think other teams kind of know how to play him. Like he's had several games in the 20s since, but those 30-pointers were just a level above anything you ever expect from a rookie. He did it twice in 13 days, and the one against Brooklyn specifically, 32 in a big win in a franchise-remembering kind of night was insane. One more break here, guys, for a quick message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Association. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end, you and people start to head out. You think you're calling for a ride? Nah, you think. You live nearby. You can make it home. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up. You lose your license. You lose your job. You total your car. You kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, and plan ahead or get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Zach, I believe I have all the rest for us here because I came way too prepared, which I told you to bring 3, and that's my bad. So I'm just going to riff, and we get to discuss the final ones on my list. I have one from last season and one more from this season to get us through the best of 2022. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Make Locked On Sports today your second listen. Go beyond the scoreboard, beyond the highlights, and behind the scenes with the local host here at the Locked On Podcast Network. I can tell you every story from the local angle. Your team every day, available wherever you get your podcast, YouTube, and the Odyssey app. Okay, this one I think most people will remember, and this is a last season game. The first 2 I chose, clearly ones people will not remember as well. The overtime win in Golden State last season on January 20th. They beat the Lakers earlier in the week, and they beat them pretty handily. They go into Golden State. Golden State, the champs that season. They were 32-12 when this game starts. They played all their guys, which they haven't historically against the Pacers, right? Curry plays, Wiggins plays, Clay plays, like everybody's out there. And Curry has 39. He hit 6 threes, right? They played very well. The Pacers beat him in overtime behind Duarte with 27, right? He drew some praise from a lot of Golden State guys that night. Justin Holiday hitting huge clutch shots. Justin Holiday hitting clutch shots. Jeremy Lamb hitting clutch shots. He had 14 and got to the free throw line 10 times. Isaiah Jackson had 15, but what I remember that game for the most is the way Duarte played. A lot of Duarte's like memorable or huge games from last season were right at the beginning, like the very first game of the season, kind of timing of the season. But they were trailing Golden State by 6 points or something in the fourth quarter. At times they fought back to tie it up. And then, Justin Holiday, 6 seconds left, drills the huge 3 to tie it at 110. They get it done in overtime with Duarte dunking and Kiefer Sykes hitting huge shots that night. That was one of his best games. I mean, that game was not something the Pacers had been doing recently. To beat the champs behind your rookie balling like that was something that, again, that team really needed at that time of the year.
Yeah, that was a huge game for Duarte. And it's just like, it's cool to see like the slow development. Like you can see, when Duarte is going for a pull up three, you just know he's feeling it. The shot's going down. That's kind of cool to see him do that kind of playmaking. But yeah, Justin Holiday, there's a stretch in his Pacers tenure where you just thought he would just always make the 3-pointer. And then it dipped a little bit, but yeah, that Golden State game was super fun to watch, especially when they end up being the champs that season.
Duarte had been back from injury for all of 4 games at that stage, right?
Wow.
He missed a bunch of time late in the year before, came back, and then wasn't starting for their first couple of games of that road trip. I think he had a big game. I forget who had a big game against early in the trip, right? That was his first start in basically a month of like real life time, a little under a month. And he just destroyed the Warriors. Like they couldn't contain him. They couldn't slow him down. He was going toe to toe with the team that ended up winning the title. And Justin Holiday, right. Like he was kind of streakier his last year than the rest of the time with the Pacers, but that was one of his bigger games. He ended up being a part of a trade that Jeremy Lamb was also in. Like that was collectively maybe both of their like best games on the way out. And even without both, I think they didn't have either of their starting bigs in this game. They did not have Miles Turner or Domantas Sabonis or Malcolm Brogdon or Karis LeVert in this game. And they still won. Like it's very reminiscent of the Warriors game in Golden State that they won this year, ironically. And Duarte was a huge part of it. That was a huge moment last season.
Yeah, the Warriors just can't stop rookies. I think that's what it is.
Well, it's funny you say that because the Pacers have been on the wrong side of 2 of those games in like the last month. It's when Brooklyn ran all over them in the final 5 minutes, and then they tripped all over themselves against New Orleans, whatever that was, like 4 days ago now. Very recent at that point. So, yes, the Pacers have been on the wrong side of those, but against Golden State twice on the road, 2 of their better games. I thought about including that Golden State game from this year, but it was a great game. It was awesome for sure, but I don't know if it's like a moment that will be remembered outside of the Andrew Nembhard stuff. Well, will I think that maybe I'm overdoing this, but will be remembered as a moment. And the last thing I typed down on this list, I was talking to Dustin Doprak, the new Indy Star Pacers beat writer. He's killing it so far. About this was after the Knicks game the Pacers played one Sunday ago, so about 10 days ago. Excuse me. Now, Halliburton missed a 3 over Julius Randle at the end of the game, and he was beating himself up over it. And a lot of fans were saying, "Why did he shoot that? Why did he pull up from so far away? Why didn't they do something else?" And all this stuff. And I thought it was a good shot. He was open. He's made that shot a million times. But to me, a lot of the criticism comes from the fact that like he's never had a moment in the clutch before. He hadn't, at least with the Pacers, where he put a game away and he looked like the dude. He was unstoppable. And I told Dustin, I said, I think some of this, the question about him taking that shot is because he's never had the moment, and he's beating himself up over it because he hasn't had the moment yet. And the 5 days later game he plays against the Miami Heat, he has 43 points. He completely wrecks the Heat down the stretch. He just played a fantastic game against the Celtics a couple days earlier, and he has that moment, right? Against not only, this has been a part of this game that has never been discussed. Like he played youth basketball with Tyler Hero for years, right? The Oshkosh dudes, there's so many good pictures of them as kids. Hero buries a shot to tie the game. Halliburton in his face at the horn, not the horn. There was a couple seconds left, but he has the moment now. He's earned it. He's been huge in the clutch for them. Just a couple days ago, when they beat the Hawks, against the Heat, against the Celtics, he finally had his moment. And not only did he play amazing that night, and I think that will always be why it's remembered for me because he had 43, but he finally had his moment. That means he's going to be their guy on those final shots for a long time. He's earned it. He's their best player. And I think him having that moment was huge and a very memorable part, and the last big moment of 2022.
So I think what's even cooler about that is Tyrese having the 1-point performance 2 weeks prior, wasn't it?
Yes.
So that was pretty cool just to see him bounce back that way defensively or offensively, I mean, and just be able to have that kind of output, just not even a week or 2 later was super awesome.
Yeah, he said he'd been thinking about it ever since. Like he wanted to bust that team up, and hey, look, there he goes. That was super impressive. Did we miss anything from this year? Like, it's crazy to think about where the Pacers were 1 year ago when they had just signed Nate Hinton because I think Keelan Martin went into health and safety protocols, and they were like 14 and 20 or something like that. And Miles Turner had just asked for more role clarity, and all these guys were kind of on the block. Rick Carlisle was in his first year as a coach. It's ridiculous how much has changed in a calendar year.
Yeah, I think another honorable mention will probably be the DeAndre Ayton saga. That was probably definitely worthy to be on a list somewhere. It definitely wasn't super fun, but it was definitely a moment that happened in 2022.
Yeah, if it ends up being real that they are a restricted free agent chaser and are willing to spend that kind of money, yeah, that's a moment that will have a lasting effect on the team. Especially if the other part of that could be a moment is if Halliburton's recruiting truly has that kind of power, because apparently he was involved in that to some extent. Yeah, I agree. That's a big one. It's been a wild year for the Pacers, and we'll of course do this again next year. One of my favorite shows to do of the year because I get to look back at so many basketball games. Zach, thank you so much for the time. Where can people follow you and all your work covering the Pacers and the Mad Ants?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm at Zach Pearson NBA on Twitter. I, like you said, have a Substack, PacersPress.com, and yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Email newsletters are the GOAT. Zach's killing it over there, doing that stuff for both the Mad Ants and the Pacers. I like when people add the Mad Ants coverage to their lineup. Tomorrow, since I would have normally done this on the last day, but the Pacers, a Thursday game, throwing everything off. We'll be talking Pacers Cavs, what happened in that game, another story from that game, and maybe looking ahead at the Clippers as they close out the year. And then next week, it's 2023. Clear eyes on a new year. Hope everybody had a great day and enjoyed this show, and we will see you tomorrow.